I'd like to welcome everyone to this polymer clay class that is given by the Living Proof Exhibit. Living Proof Exhibit is an organization that actually puts on a real exhibit every year of art that has been made by cancer survivors. And so every other year it is at the Figge Art Museum in Davenport, and on the alternate years we have the exhibit in places like Muscatine. This year it will be in Dubuque, so it does move around. It's a wonderful way for the local artists to show their work, and there is some wonderful work by people who do photography, painting, sculpture, crochet. I do jewelry, any medium that you can think of. And if you know someone who is a cancer survivor, please have them check out the Living Proof Exhibit website so that they could get involved either with the actual exhibit or with the creative sessions like the one that we're doing today. And so, like I said, today's class is in polymer clay, and I said it was going to be polymer clay pendants. So I prepared a kit for my online participants and for my in-person participants. And so you have everything that you need. For my online participants, be very careful with the blade that I've provided. It is not the traditional blade that you use with polymer clay. It's something I've devised for you. And for my in-person people, the roller and the blade stays here. Everything else is you can take. Polymer clay is a wonderful medium. It's pretty forgiving. The colors mix beautifully even between brands. So you can do whatever you want with it. People make little figurines. They cover picture frames and other objects with polymer clay. But what we're going to be doing is making a pendant. You will have leftover clay, and I will give you some examples of what you can use that leftover clay. So there will be absolutely no waste. You'll see in your packet that you have a plastic bag, and it has some layers of clay in it. And what I did was I cut out those squares and I layered them. So you can take your clay out and take your piece of parchment paper and put it down in front of you, and we'll go from there. Hang on. And then some parchment paper for myself. I have to get clay for myself too. You let me know when you're 16. Okay. I think you can switch. Okay. All right. You'll notice there's like a little snake in the bag too of clay, or there should be. And if there isn't, I apologize. So you should have a packet of clay like this and a little snake. All right. You can take the snake, kind of roll it out. Remember rolling Play-Doh? A lot of this is just like Play-Doh, except you can't eat this and you can't bake Play-Doh, but polymer clay you can bake, and you can bake in a low oven. You can use your own oven at home, or you can use a toaster oven like we will be using here today. And most polymer clay is baked at 275 degrees. You have to check the package because some brands of polymer clay bake at a lower temperature. If you use translucent clays, those usually bake at a lower temperature. So what we're going to do with our little packet of clay is kind of just smooth it around the edges a little bit. It's going to get out of shape again anyway, and we're going to keep smoothing. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll it out. Roll it. What this is doing, it's getting all the air bubbles out that are between the layers. And the thing that we're going to be creating is a type of polymer clay project called mokume-gane. Mokume-gane is a Japanese technique that was developed in the 17th century to work with metals. And what they did was they used this compression of metals technique to create various designs for for swords, or the handles of swords and things like that. And that's where the idea of mokume-gane started. So we're going to roll it, we're pressing it. Okay, and I've almost not, but not quite doubled it in length. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm going to take one piece and stack it on top of the other. And I start out by putting the straight edges together on top of each other. Okay, so it looks like this. So we're just stacking it on top. You see, guys? Okay. All right. And then we're going to roll it out again, pressing, trying to get it fairly even, but even that isn't all that important. Like I said, it's very forgiving. And we're going to roll it in the opposite direction. And I have a piece that looks like this. Okay. And I can kind of pull it a little bit to square it off, but we'll get to squaring it off some more later. Here we go. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it being a square. All right. So I'm okay. Take your Katie, take your blade and go underneath like that. You must have pressed. You must have had a lot of strength if it stuck to the paper. And it is because of the warmth in the air, you know, it makes it tough working with clay. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm laying it down again. I'm cutting it.
I think I'm behind.
It's okay, because really it doesn't even matter how many cuts you make. Okay. All right. So once again, I've got, and you're seeing some weird things happening a little bit with the edge. Okay. So I'm going to roll it a little bit. And then I'm going to cut it again. Okay. All right. I have a strange little piece over on the side, so I think I'm just going to cut that off a little bit. And I'm going to square things off a little bit all the way around. And you can save your little clay scraps over on the side. All right. So now I'm going to do one more. I'm trying to maintain this rectangular shape. Now I'm going to make one more cut. I'm flattening. I'm taking this acrylic plate and I'm going to press down, but you don't need to do anything like that. I'm going to cut it in half again, as close to in half as I can get it. Stack it. And then I'm going to push in all my crazy sides and make it a nice little stack that looks like this. Oh, and it's probably about 1.5 inches by 1 inch. But it doesn't really, the size of it doesn't matter too much. So you see what it looks like. It's a rectangle.
It's about what, 1.5 inches by 1 inch?
It's about 1.5 inches by 1 inch. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is, and you have in your kits, you have a toothpick and you have a dowel. So I am going to get the toothpick and dowel and give you some instruction here. Okay. I'm taking my toothpick, I'm going down into the clay. You can do it part way down or all the way down, it doesn't matter. Just stick it in. If you can see the holes that I've made with my toothpick. And then if you have a pen cap or something, you can take that, but you don't need to. It's whatever you want to do to make impressions into the clay. So I have this pen cap and I'm putting a couple impressions in to the clay, and it's distorting the clay, so don't worry about it. All right, then I'm going to take, let's see, I have the dowel. I think I'll make a couple holes with the dowel. We're going to push the clay all back together again too, so don't worry about that. Now you'll want to take that snake and break off pieces, and maybe in some of the holes that you made with the dowel, stick it down into those holes. Okay, I'm pushing my rectangle back together as much as I can. Flattening it out, pushing it together, flattening it out. Now, I am going to take my blade and I'm going to make some cuts in the clay. Keep the pieces together, but you're going to be pressing them because you're going to be pressing them together, back together, I should say. Okay, and here I have some corrugated blades. And so I'm going to make a corrugated cut, and I'm going to pass these blades around so you guys can make a corrugated cut. Work, and I'll be back in a sec.
I got a little bit. Oh, yours looks good. Yes. I got some of my and I'll explain something about those scraps. That's gotta be fun. Nice.
Except for if you look at it, this side is a little bit from that side.
Okay, so I'm gonna go all this. You just roll it out. Really nice. Yours is nice and flat.
That was better.
I think it's flat.
Yep.
Flat. Mine's John Deere.
So my next piece I'm going to do, that piece was pretty thin. That was as thin as I could slice it, okay? But the next piece is going to be probably 1/4 of an inch thick. Because we want to be able to have, we want the pendant that we're going to make have some substance to it. Okay, so did I read mine? There we go. It was me. All right. Okay, so here we go. This is what I'm going to make my pendant out of. And you'll see that in your kit, you have a little plastic jar. It has a couple of crystals in it that you can use or not use to embellish your pendant. But the reason why you have that jar is because you can use that jar to cut approximately a 1-inch circle. Yep. And for my in-person people, if you'd rather use a 1-inch cutter, I have a 1-inch cutter here. Okay. All right. Did you cut a 1/4 inch?
Sorry.
Okay.
One second.
And what you can do is you can look at your design and see where you want to cut, what looks the best for cutting your pendant. And I kind of like this right here. Oh,
Well, if you look at this.
well, if you if you haven't cut yet,
Oh.
you can take a piece of plastic. I'm sorry. You can take a piece of plastic and put it over your clay, and it helps to dome it helps to make a dome of the clay. It rounds it. Yeah, yeah. But it's not 100%, necessary. So if you want to do that and pass that. So what I'm going to do, and I don't always do this, so don't worry. So I'm putting the plastic over my clay, and I barely cut into it before. And so I'm going to press into it. And you could roll out the other end of your clay if you did it at one end, and then you could roll it slightly if you need it to be, you know, longer to accommodate your. Okay, so this is what I have. And then what I do is I smooth with my fingers. Around the edges, and actually this is pretty smooth, so I don't have to do much to it. And so what I'll do now is I will bake this at 275 degrees, and we have an oven actually heated up to 275 degrees, don't we, Katie?
Well, I didn't have to turn itself off before, so that should be
Okay. And so what I usually do is I bake it on a piece of parchment paper in an aluminum pan or a little oven tray. What I do is I save my old oven trays from toaster ovens, and I use those for baking my clay on. But I always put a piece of parchment paper underneath it. Underneath the clay. And so what we're going to do is make sure that your clay piece, before we bake it, make sure that it fits in to your pendant piece.
No, we'll just bring it up and up.
Yeah, it won't shrink. Okay. So if you need to squish it, so this is called a bezel, and this should fit, and it does. It fits in there. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to bake this at 275. We're going to bake it for about a half an hour, and then what I do is I usually put it in a bowl of ice water, but it's not 100% necessary, but it does something to it. So that's what I do. And then in your packet, you have a little disposable super glue thing. And so you'll, after it's out of the oven and cooled, and it cools off really fast. You just stick it into your bale with some super glue on the back, and then you have a necklace